Okay.
It will keep having to go through this indefinitely.
Yep.
And it's as simple as that. And we just have to roll with the punches, the inconveniences, but it's still very, very important to stay up. There are several things. I don't know if this was mentioned or not, but the recommendations are to remain with the original boosters for the time being. They have found that compared to people who are have not taken any COVID vaccines, staying up to date on all of the current boosters and remaining this way, there is a difference in the two groups that if they do get Omicron, those that have had boosters, that are completely boosted, they do better than the group that has not been vaccinated. That is hard data, and it's statistically significant. So you just roll with the punches. It's way too early to outguess things. Those people who are familiar with computers know that each program that is made, they don't have all the answers. And they release the program when they think they have most of the answers. And then there is what they call beta testing. And beta testing is what determines the upgrades that you receive on every few months, or sometimes if it's very critical, within weeks. It's an upgrade to the program. So it may be program 2. It may be program 2, but it is then program 2.2, 2.3, 2.33, 2.34, 2.4. And then it keeps going up and up and up. This is where we stand also with the virus, with the current virus. If we take this in, so there's a marked similarity to this whole thing. And so if we can accept it with the computer, we should be able to accept everything as it comes along with the COVID virus. We just have to learn to adapt to it. And once we do, we'll do just fine. But there is no difference between the beta testing and the virus. It's always going to be one step ahead of us. Yes, Don.
Yeah, I can speak to the computer side, having been in IT for 50 years. Own my own software development company, but it is statistically impossible to track every
That's right.
error in a computer program. Can't be done. And so there's this, the cynical say, well, Microsoft and the others, Google, will just put the software out without hardly testing it and let the complaints come back, and then they'll react to those. Exactly. That's a little different though than the vaccination scenario.
Well, actually not. In the sequence, the algorithm is the same. And once you understand the algorithm, it's a series of steps, then you say, oh, okay, now I understand I have to keep myself vaccinated. It's no different than the flu shots, because we do not know the cycle of all these variants. And once in a while, the flu bug throws a hooker into things and comes up with one we do not have a vaccine for, and everybody comes down with the flu after the vaccinations.
My point was that software doesn't mutate by itself, but the pathogen does. So you can never, it's whack-a-mole. You can never stomp them out.
Yeah. But it's the same in genetics from the other direction. Those critters that mutate faster, they outguess everything else. Because while people are trying to adapt, or animals are trying to adapt to plants, whatever, to one change in the environment, i.e. a virus, then they have to, it's by chance. What the vaccines do, put us in a better level of chance to be able to outsmart the current virus, or the virus that has been around for a while. So that's all medicine does. It doesn't solve the issue, but it'll always be one step behind, because there'll always be a mutation, which we don't like to use the term mutation, we use variant. So that's the whole thing there. Well, let's get started. We have a lot to go over today, and what we're going to do is something again a little different. Okay, because all we're going to do is I'm going to read the opening prayer. David will give us his weekly homily via poetry and or literature, other literature, and then we will go to the reading for today. So what I'm going to do is to get us started. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen.
Amen.
So David, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning and Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Before I begin, I wanted to point out to Don that yesterday's Final Jeopardy question had to do with astronomy and the Bible, which is something I thought you would be interested in. There's signs in the Bible. Apparently and I think you might have brought this up at one point, that there was a very large meteorite fall in the area of ancient Sodom about 5,000 years ago. And there were some people trying to make a connection there. And so I just wanted to point that out to you.
Well, thank you, David. Also, I'll refer back to you the article in the I think the latest Wired magazine on the periodic flaring of the sun, the micronovas, on 12,000 year and 6,000 year cycles.
Yeah, I know that's something that you've been very interested in. Thanks, Don.
So check that out too. Thank you.
Okay, my poem today is from Henry Moore, from his philosophical poetry. That famous star nailed down in Cassiopeia. How was it hammered in your solid sky? What pincers pulled it out again that we no longer see it? Whither did it fly? Astronomers say it was least as high as the 8th sphere. It gave no parallax, no more than those light lamps that there we spy. Thank you.
Very nice. David?
Yes.
I don't know if anyone picked up on this. The pincers.
Well, it's kind of, I think it's kind of these little staples that keep a star frozen into the sky. And without the pincers, the new star would be moving along like a comet, where we change its position every day. In order to keep it in one spot, they have these little staples that sort of keep it to the sky. That's how I'd interpret it.
We
But
could
of
do
course,
that.
Modern astronomy shows that there are two very different types of objects. A comet, which moves fairly close to the Earth, and a distant sun, like the supernova, that is plastered in the same part of the sky. There was a supernova in 1572 in Cassiopeia, as Henry Moore suggests, another one in 1604 in Ophiuchus, and haven't been any in our galaxy since then. At least ones that we could see.
Okay, very good. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you for the little astronomy lesson.
Thanks.
Anyway, what I'd like to do is to ask David to please read. We're in Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11.
Okay, 8. Okay, starting with verse 8, which is very appropriate for today. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath unto the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt do no manner of work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy beagle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and he rested on the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Okay. Thank you. Either your commentary or you added a few words, but that's okay. It all falls under our discussion today. What the different implications of the Sabbath are. And there have been many commentary written through the ages. I hope Rabbi Miri will be able to join us because I know Rabbi Norman is not going to be with us today. But there are an innumerable number of commentaries about this passage and also how the Sabbath is practiced, etc. So I think the first thing to discuss is what's written here, and then I'm going to ask what the Sabbath means to you. Okay, and because it has different implications, we'll come to that. So let's take verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Okay. Any comments?
Yeah.
Yes, Michael.
For clarification, we should keep the Sabbath. We do not work. Now, what would be the definition clearly of work? Well, for me to answer that myself, it would seem that you don't do anything that you do to earn money. Keep yourself. So you don't do that. However, if you like doing something, but it's a hobby, you do not earn any living from it, does that change? Does that change the complexity of this?
I think it does.
Okay. In what way, David?
I think it does is the same reason that Michael has said, that if you're doing something as an amateur, from the Latin, that you love doing it, it's okay, you can do that. So before our session today, I was outside and looked at the sunspots with my telescope. And this is admiring something that's beautiful in nature. It is not something that I ever gotten paid for, not something that I ever expect to get paid for. And one thing where I might disagree with you, Michael, is that I don't know if money should be the standard. If you really love your job, could you not be allowed to pursue that on a Saturday? If you are, say, a physician, a doctor, and you love your work, could you visit a patient or two and see how they're doing? I think, in my mind, I think that's okay. But to go out and empty the trash and do things that you do every other day as if it were any other day, that would be a no-no.
Well, let me respond to that, Marty.
Sure.
Thank you. I appreciate what you said very much, David. My work has been music my entire life. I played the piano for many, many years, for many decades. And it's never been work, although that's how I earn my living. I've been very fortunate because this is something I truly love. Been very fortunate, as I say, and that's how I earn my living. It is also not only my work, but my hobby. It's been a way of life for me. I could not imagine living my life without doing that. But still in all, as I would approach it from the Orthodox and the next one up is conservative. I did not play on Shabbos, the piano or music. I just held that you don't do that. And it's very confusing to me when there are rabbis that would play, for example, the guitar on a Shabbat, on Shabbos, but they wouldn't have the shofar sounded on a Shabbat. That's very confusing, and I certainly wish the rabbis were here too to talk about that. So thank you, David, and
Okay,
thank you, Marty.
Thank you. And Wendy had her hand up.
Okay, I'll let Wendy do it and then Don.
Okay, I was, when that question came up, I thought, just like the constitutional amendments were made hundreds of years ago, and a lot of them really don't compute now. And even though states are going way back 100 years, I'm not getting into political stuff. I think the same thing is happening with the Jewish interpretation of work. For example, light. Now, it was very difficult to get light way back when all you had was sticks and you needed to light and do work to get a fire to get light. When here you have a flip of a switch or even a clap of the hands, depending on what your system is in your house. And people still say, no, that's work. You need to have somebody to do that for you. So I think a lot of what they need to go into is really a change in what is considered work, because, and I'm going to go to one thing that always bugged me, when the Orthodox rabbis in Israel a few years ago decided people shouldn't be driving, so they left the synagogue, pulled out big ropes so the cars couldn't cross the road. Wasn't that work? That's the kind of thing I look at, is like, well, I think things need a better interpretation now. Modern life has changed things.
Good point. Good point. Yes, Don.
Yes, sir. I don't have any trouble at all with this, because what I'm hearing in the examples are the words I and my hobby. I like this, I do this. I mean, what God requires is that you turn all your attention to Him on that day. And so once you do that, there is no temptation to go back to my and I until the next day.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see it. I don't think there's any problem at all with that.
It's a good point. I think what you're really talking about is the way our society and our culture have changed over the years to emphasize the individual's interpretation. we have allowed for that. And that is, and we can discuss that in another format. But these are very interesting comments that are being made. And yes, Don, you are correct about God. Okay.
I can add one more thing to
Sure.
this.
And then I want to do Ruth Ann, and I know
Okay.
Michael had his hand up. I just want to be sure we get all the comments in. Sure.
Just what, and that is the fact that there is a seventh day. I never did quite get that, because there's no reason why we can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, where did that day of rest? I know where it came from in Genesis, but why, why aren't there 60 times 6 days in the year?
Got it. Okay. I'm going to let Ruth Ann say a few words, and then Michael again.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I think with this, that you need to, everybody's looking at it from a male perspective of work. Okay, I think for this particular, you need to look at it more from a female perspective of at least what used to be traditional female work. Okay, and the fact that it is not allowed on Shabbat. So there is no cooking, no cleaning. I mean, just minimal of childcare and that kind of stuff. But if you think of it that way, okay, I think it gives you a better perspective of what work is, because this is stuff that's not paid. So look at the definitions of what unpaid work you're not allowed to do.
That's right.
And the one thing I could never understand the Shabbos Goy, because it says right here that you can't have paid, you can't have servants and stuff doing this stuff either.
You got it.
So how can you have somebody come in and flip the light switch for you when it's definitely prohibited?
There you go. There you go.
But Michael, if you look at it this way, do you pay Betty to cook for you?
Oh, yeah. Every day.
Right.
No.
Okay, but that's
No,
what I'm
but-
saying. So if you look at that kind of stuff as that kind of work, then I think that explains your music and stuff. And believe me, I don't understand the playing of the guitar either. That was when Norm came out here for his quote unquote kind of audition type thing, and he needed to borrow a guitar from somebody. I had no clue why he needed a guitar. I mean, it's still very foreign to me. So
Okay.
I understand where you're coming from with that.
Go ahead, Mike, and then
okay.
and then back to
Yeah,
Wendy.
I wanted to address David one more time, but I'll just say to Ruth Ann, there are some stoves and ovens, I believe, that have a Shabbat setting. I think I might have come across that at one
More
time.
refrigerators than stoves.
Oh, okay.
But most stoves, I mean, that could be possible now. I mean, who knows? But I'm just
Okay.
saying, for the longest time, the women made their cholent and they put it in the oven Friday before Shabbat started, set the stove at 200 degrees, and by the time they came home for services, they were it was done. But like I said, there was and I can also tell you from a lot of the Orthodox that childcare on Saturday goes to the husband.
Okay. Yeah. So
Okay,
now,
so they don't even have to worry about that work.
Okay.
okay.
What I want to do before
let me
we start
finish.
going off on an angle here.
No,
Okay.
can I finish?
All
Marty,
right, make it brief, because there are a lot of other people
I'm
that
sorry I
want to
said
talk.
that. I'm sorry I
Okay.
said what I said. Just to Dovid, that I never considered what I did work. As a matter of fact, when people ask me what kind of work did I do, I never said I did any work. I never did any work because I could never attach the word work to what I did musically. I couldn't do it. And so Eventually I had to come out, but it was really hard to do that. And so I hope you understand what I'm suggesting. Thank you, David. Marty, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to call on Helene first, and then I know David had his hand up. I don't know if it was for Wendy or not, but Helene usually has to leave sooner. So let me call on her.
Thank you, honey. I do appreciate it. And I sat here thinking, I don't know if I want to tell you this, but I'm probably the only one here who has ever been part of an Orthodox Shabbat.
Good.
Is there anyone else who knows what they do on
Yes.
Shabbat? Oh, good, good. And if in my family, well, I guess all the Orthodox, years ago, this is 100% Hasidic. What they do is what you're saying, yes, preparation. But I remember as a child, I saw this. We sat down to eat, and then after the eating, my aunt would walk around and pet the children, but her husband would follow her around the table. And every so often he would pat her on her hips a little bit. And maybe not so much on her hips, but, a little pat. And she would say, Carol, the children. He said, that's all right. It's all right. We're just going to go to take a nap. Well, sure enough, that's what they do.
Mhm.
They go into the bedroom without the children and they take a nap. And that's why there are so many Orthodox children.
Okay. An interesting commentary. I like that. I was reading it loud and clear from the beginning.
There are many customs.
Actually, it's a mitzvah. It is
That's
a
right.
mitzvah to do that on
Yep,
on
on the
Shabbat.
Shabbos.
That's right. So it is a lot more that goes into this. That is correct.
It's a huge mitzvah.
That
It
is
really-
right.
It's the way it is, and they're encouraged to
Mhm.
have children. And God knows they have children.
Yes. But
Julia.
but what you're saying is very true.
Yeah.
What else do they do on this with the Sabbath service? What do the men do?
You're asking me?
Yeah, during the Shabbat service, is it
Well-
solemn or is it a day of joy?
It's a day of joy.
Yes,
Day
and
of-
sometimes there's dancing.
Yeah.
There is dancing. I would like to tell Helene, I come from an Orthodox family, Helene, so I'm familiar with that. I was born into Orthodox. My parents and my grandparents were Orthodox back east. So I want you to know that, Helene. You're not alone.
Well, I know I'm not alone, but it's nice, very nice to hear you say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Helene.
David, you had your hand up, or Wendy, I don't know, but
Yeah.
your background.
When I look at that particular commandment, it's almost like when you're seeing something in a different font. And I imagine that if we had the original tablets here, the commandment about the Sabbath would be written in a smaller font because there's so much to it. And I think it's explained beautifully well that the commandment is the idea of the Sabbath, that it needs to be a different kind of a day.
Mhm.
We do
Right.
things we normally would not do. We work on a lower level if we have to, and we relax. We talk with God. We have Torah study. We do things that we normally would not do another day. I think it's the idea of a different day, which is at the heart of this commandment.
Now, I want to throw in an extra bit here, because here it talks about remember. the word remember, but in Deuteronomy, the word is observe. The same root, but it's observe. So is there a difference between remembering and observing? I'll get back to you, Michael, because I want to move us forward a little bit because there is so much to go through. So what about that? Why is it important to remember? We've heard this before in what we read just a few months ago. Remember Passover and what it means. Remember the Sabbath and what it means. Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, based on what the first words you said, and you said about do you observe or celebrate? And I had a big problem with that myself, and I decided that you observe the Shabbat by celebrating it. That's all I wanted to say.
But but there are temples. We have to realize that there is another group of thought where it is a day of solemnity. You are supposed to be very solemn in your approach to it, to the prayers, the approach to observing the entire Sabbath service. So I don't know which one is predominant today. I would have to ask the rabbis that question. Someone may know.
It's intertwined.
But I think it is. Yes, Helene, and then Don.
Yeah. The whole notion of God's will is to pass this on to your children and your grandchildren. How does it remain alive if it's not passed on through the generations? And that's why it's
very
important
good. Very good.
That way.
Yes, it is. If you think about it, it's not just to remember, okay, and teach from what you remember. It's to observe. Then your children will remember.
Exactly.
They will see what you do.
Exactly.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Yes, Don.
Well, at that time, with the tabernacle, and later on with the first temple and then the second temple, the remembrance and observation was animal sacrifice. That's what took place on the Sabbath day. So, and then with the destruction of the second temple, that ceased. And so there had to be a different way of remembering and celebrating the Sabbath day. So it's fairly modern. I mean, it was a bloodbath for 1,500 years.
Yes, yeah, it's very true. Very true. Yes, Ruth Ann.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wonder if some of these places where you think that especially the service of is more solemn. I wonder if it's so much of that, or it's because so much of, especially the Orthodox service, is done by rote. I mean, it's, everybody, it could be different spots in the service. I mean, except for the Torah reading, which they all kind of come back. But, you can't hear the chazan really. They're up there in an undertone speaking. So there's just no joy in just, it's kind of like they're just rushing through it by memory. And I remember saying something to Norm about how refreshing it was, that he seemed to be part of the service, enjoying the service, whereas the rabbi back in Pittsburgh, it almost seemed like he was just up there. He could have been reading the newspaper and going through the service by memory. So that doesn't give you the joy that it just makes it totally different. And I'm thinking, and also when you're talking about here with the keep and then later on to observe, or remember and then observe. Remember, I mean, these people just came out of 300 years of slavery, and which times they probably were not able to keep the Sabbath. And I think at this point, God's trying to get them to remember what they were probably told, but maybe couldn't observe. But by the time 40 years later, Moses is telling them, hey, you remember you have to observe this even when I'm not around. Yeah, so it's different that way.
Very, very good. I'm going to read something that I don't know if anyone has seen this before, but this is from the writings of Rabbi Savat. Okay. And let me see if I can find the beginning of this. Okay. Every seventh day, the Israelite is to renounce dominion over time, thereby renouncing autonomy, and recognizes God's dominion over time and thus over himself. Keeping the Sabbath is acceptance of the sovereignty of God. Any comments? I also found that some people have said it was a proclamation of God as the Lord of time, and the Sabbath was therefore celebrated, a Sabbath for the sake of the Master of the universe. Yes, Don.
Well, those are profound words, but nobody so far has come up with a definition of what time is. So, you just have to accept it, since God is the sovereign over all, and he must be sovereign over time as well, whatever that is.
Okay, good point. And I understand where you're coming from. Yes, David.
My favorite definition of time comes from my friend Roy Bishop, and I think it's appropriate here. Time is nature's way of making sure everything doesn't happen at once.
That was coined by Mandelbrot, the IBM mathematician. He also said that the purpose of space is to keep it all from happening to me.
Okay, yes, Ruth Ann.
I was just thinking, that time was thought of differently, I'm sure, back then. And even now with the Orthodox especially, the time of the Shabbat is between basically two astronomical things. The setting of the sun gets to a certain point, it's Shabbat. Okay. The next day, you get 3 stars in the sky, and hopefully it's not a cloudy night, but you get 3 stars, Shabbat is over. So it's the period in between those two events. And I can see if you're talking about that, I can see where you could say that God is responsible for time.
Right. So here's an interesting comment. Don made this comment before, alluding to what was in the passage in Genesis. And when you read this, what David read from Torah, it says, the heaven and the earth were finished and all their array. On the 7th day, God finished the work which he had been doing. And he ceased on the 7th day from all the work which he had done. And God blessed the 7th day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation which he had done. So for those who want to know why God selects the 7th, this is why. Okay? So if that day is holy, there are many discussions that I've come across on the Sabbath too, about the Sabbath. We are talking about making it holy because God is master over time and space and everything that fits into space. Okay, so what's your take on that? By the way, I'm not repeating anything new. Rabbi Heschel has a whole book on this. Okay. So, any comments? You're not one-upping Heschel if you have a different take on it, but it's we're trying to put the day into perspective, and different groups in different depends on where you are when you are born. If you were born in Africa, or if you were born in Asia, or the or North America, South America, Europe, doesn't matter. The traditions of how the Sabbath is adhered to varies. Okay, so we are most closely aligned with the European heritage. As we have more people come, I should say that people in South America are more of the Sephardic branch, which is totally different in the way the Sabbath is celebrated. Okay, and then you have the Hasidism and all this. The point is, it's not how you do it. It's just that you remind yourself about it every Sabbath, because that's the important thing. And what are we supposed? Everything is supposed to stop. Everything. Okay, Tobor is basically saying everything on the earth is going to stand still and make you think. Okay, so Tobor is a robot that comes down to earth and makes the earth stand still. The title of the movie, The Day and the book, right? The Day the Earth Stood Still. Okay, so basically, what are we? It's not how we do it, but what are we supposed to do?
The way we approach it.
No, has nothing to do with the approach. It's what are we doing? What is how we do it? What is the most important question here?
It's what we don't do.
Well, we already said you don't do anything. Okay, what are we supposed to do on the Sabbath?
Pray.
Okay, Don, pray is one. I'm going, Don, if it's okay, I'm going to let Grace hasn't joined in for a long time. I'll wait for her to swallow. Okay.
Okay, so God set it up so that we could succeed at this because he's the example. He rests on the seventh day. And we are to honor and respect him of that day of rest. The what may be different for everybody. You know, I've heard a rabbi, I can't remember his name, but he said, be at one with the universe, right? You know, enjoy one another, encompass your family, you know, do kind things, go to the extra mile to spend time with your loved ones while honoring God. I was watching a service last night. I think it was Central Synagogue. It was really upbeat and happy and joyous. There was a few jokes cast and there was music and it was just really nice. And it's very similar to how we do it at Beth Shalom Temple. So I'm used to that, and I like that. And last night I connected with my youngest because it's Shabbat.
Mhm.
He's the Jew in the family, and I gave him and his wife for their child, their only son, a folk book of Jewish stories, read aloud stories that I picked up at a library sale a couple, 3 years ago. And I've read it back and forth, and it's really wonderful. And I asked them first if I could, give him this book, and they were just overjoyed about it, because the house I grew up in, we did everything. I mean, we mother prepared the meal Friday night, and we ate it all weekend long. I wasn't allowed to compete on, Friday, but I could go to competition Saturday evening after the sunset. Why? I don't know. But that was just, what we did. I used to compete as a equestrian, and I look forward to that. I look forward to that because my parents ran the concession stand and made hamburgers, so I always got a hamburger and shared it with my horse. She would eat the bread, and I'd eat the burger. So it was just something that I remember doing, and we did family things.
Right.
All evening Friday, and then Saturday I could compete. I wasn't allowed to compete on Friday because they were 2-day events, but on Fridays I wasn't allowed to compete, and they never gave me a justification of why. It's just, you're not allowed to. You're
Okay.
not allowed to.
So,
We're
yeah, no, I understand
about family and
exactly.
celebration
Right.
with family and spending time together, and being intimate, and being respectful of God, because God is the example for this. I'm reading and learning, and that's just my take on it. And I don't have much else to say. But thank you. I love the
But
comments I
what you
heard.
said was very important. That's one of the important components of the Sabbath. Yes, Don.
I agree. Thank you, Grace. Also, I don't know about then, but now we make a distinction between the body and the mind, which one is resting. And we can, our bodies look like they're in complete rest, but our minds are turning around. We're thinking, what am I going to do as soon as the Sabbath is over? Who I resent, who I don't resent. The mind does not stay quiet no matter what the commandment. So, and I don't know if the rabbis over the ages have just treated that, but the meditative religions like Buddhism do treat that primarily, but I've never seen that separation in Judaism.
Well, in Judaism, and I can speak for the rabbis. They would be more knowledgeable about this, but there is a lot written in Judaism separating what you think from what you do, because the thinking is all of the implications that what you may do. Okay, all the pros and cons and everything that you're supposed to do with your cortex. But it's the action that then defines you. But the thinking part is considered okay. Do you remember Jimmy Carter? And when he was president, does anyone remember his infamous quotation?
Which one?
About lust. It's okay to lust in the mind, you just don't do it. And I'm paraphrasing it. And so it's not only in Judaism. It's found in different branches of Christianity. The same concept. There are different takes on this concept, as you mentioned in Buddhism, wiping the slate clean. Okay, if I'm again paraphrasing, so that you don't think.
But Marty, that's different. Restraint is different than rest. So on the day of rest, you may be restraining yourself, but that's not rest.
No, I didn't use the word restraint. I
Okay,
never used that word.
that's what I thought you were implying.
No. There's a lot more to this because this whole concept has influenced the thinking of Spinoza and nature. This is also the rabbi brought up the philosopher Rosenzweig, a Jewish philosopher, who is talking about this also, contemplating the remembering things, and that includes your relationship with God, the Sabbath, man, and the world. So there's a lot more. There are a lot smarter people than I'll ever be, but we can strive to achieve that way of thinking. So this is all centered around the Sabbath, these discussions. Yes, Michael.
To go back a few moments, when we're talking about the Jimmy Carter, it's okay to lust in your mind, but don't do it. I'm not sure if that applies to Judaism, and I'll tell you why. On Yom Kippur, at least in the Orthodox, when I attended synagogue, shul, it was said that God on that day can read the inner thoughts of your mind, and that has to be kept pure. So that's why I'm questioning that possible, if that really applies to Judaism.
Okay. Suzanne has her hand up. I'll let her start with this. Sure.
I want to also comment on this. Jesus taught that even thinking about like a lustful thing, or along, since that was the example Carter used, that's the same as actually doing it. So so it would be a sin even to think it. I guess that's what I'm saying. So I'm not sure what your source was, but Jesus was very clear about that in the New Testament.
Okay. Well, in Judaism, if you think it, that's one thing, but if you say it, it's no different than if you do it. Okay? And there's a lot of commentary to that. Yes, Don.
From a practical sense, the Hebrews are gathered out in the middle of the desert. They're surrounded by enemies. On the Sabbath, would they have posted sentries? I mean, is there any latitude there at all? Because right now, right now there are always sentries around us because there are enemies around, and that was certainly true then. So what would a sentry be charged with? Would he be subject, or she be subject to that command as well?
Well, if you think about it, there must have been something where somebody said it's okay to do this type of thing because it's essential to protect everyone. Just like it's okay today, I know doctors, lawyers, firemen, policemen, even soldiers can get a special rabbinic dispensation to do their thing on the Sabbath because they are essential for the preservation of the society. I do not know when that concept occurred. I don't know if it's in the modern era, Middle Ages or earlier, I just do not know. I can't answer that. But it would be a logical assumption that somewhere along the line you had to do that.
I haven't seen it mentioned in the.
No, it's a good
Torah.
question. It's a good question. Yes,
Judaism,
Michael.
thank you. Judaism is a very strict religion. However, there are provisions made in Judaism to
Mhm.
preserve society and life, and we as Jews have to use good common sense, because that's what God instilled in us. He said He gave us free will and common sense to approach things and to go forward with our lives. And it seems to me that when things are necessary for life, that you can go forward. You can go forward with whatever you have to do. You at the same time you keep what you can, you preserve what you can, and you go forward with what you know is really the right thing to do.
Very good, Michael. To expand on that, it is things that are necessary to preserve the society are still, you have to go through, they have to be observed. Because otherwise, as Don points out, society would be endangered during that time.
Well, let's
And
say
yeah,
there's a rabbi. Let's say there's a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, who's also a physician, a brilliant surgeon. He gets called. We need you. We have a life and death situation, Rabbi.
yeah.
We need you at the hospital right now. What do you think that rabbi is going to do? Say, I can't go? He's going to defeat the fact that he's a rabbi.
That's right. Exactly. So there's a lot more to.
And
to
that
this.
would be, I think that would be the highest position an Orthodox rabbi can take, is go to the
Mhm.
is to go to the hospital, perform the surgery, and save the life of a person. That
Yeah.
would be the highest thing that the rabbi can possibly do, an Orthodox rabbi, if you think about it.
Yeah, you are correct, Michael. By the way, the same root word for Sabbath, Shabbat, if you just change it just a wee bit to just a second. I had it a second ago. Oh, Shabbat. Okay, because remember what at certain times the debate and the vav can be interchanged. Okay, and that means to cease or rest. So if it's Shabbat, then you mean to cease or rest what you're doing. If it's Shabbat, that includes the Sabbath. That's the Sabbath. So that's why I brought up Tobor. Okay, the robot that stops the world. Okay, and it's a very interesting concept. In the movie, everyone panics, but it maybe not. Maybe if people were Jewish, maybe they wouldn't have panicked because they've already done that. I'm saying that facetiously. But any other comments about this? Because I wanted to talk about it. Several people brought up. Yes, Suzanne. Yes.
Okay. I've been taught that even though we look at, well, for Judaism, Saturday is the Shabbat, and in Christianity, they look at Sunday. But the important thing is for each individual to keep one day a week as holy. And then that concept there covers critical services on weekends. I mean, you know, firemen, policemen, doctors, nurses. You know, I don't find anything scripturally wrong with that, but I don't know if that was God's intent, but I can't believe that God would not want somebody to be helped if they say were to have a heart attack on the Shabbat and not, you know, just left to lay there. And yeah, I can't believe that. So picking one day a week for each individual seems to make sense to me and to satisfy his requirement.
Good point. Very good point. So is this just for the individual? Yes, okay. Yes, Don.
Circling back to Genesis, which I don't think we actually discussed. On the seventh day, God rested. Okay, that's good enough. That's a good enough reason for everybody else to rest. But, and not only did he rest, at the end of each day, he reflected on his creation and saw that it was good. And then at the end of the week, he created everything and saw that was all good. So,
but he goes one step further, Don. He says it was holy.
Yeah, well,
it's
okay.
more than just contemplation. He has declared it a holy day.
I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what holy means, but I get the idea.
Sacred.
Sacred. Even then, I'm not quite sure, but I'll accept that. But my question was, in order to know the seventh day, you have to know when the sun is in exactly the same position a year later. Otherwise, there's no way to tell one day from the next, or no way to tell when the weeks repeat. So I'm wondering, with the Hebrews out in the desert there, somebody must have been charged keeping that calendar.
Yeah, there would be. There would be.
Yeah. Otherwise, it, you know, hey, is it Saturday or Sunday? I forgot.
Well, you count. It's not hard to do. You count the sunsets or the sunrise, and Midrash is that it was sunset.
But you have to verify that the sun has come around to its original place after a year of those days.
Ancient man, and we go back thousands of years BC, understood that the position of the sunrise and sunset changed.
I know that.
But you can count each one individually. The sun came up today.
Okay, that's what
and the sun set today.
Okay, so within the context of the Ten Commandments, we only care that we can count to 7, and on the 7th day we rest.
Yeah.
And then we start over again, no matter how long a year actually is. That's what I was looking for. Okay.
Right. And in Judaism, it's mostly when sunset because of the Sabbath.
Right. Got it.
Okay, from sunset to sunset. Okay. And so but yes, they had to have some concept of time, not as sophisticated as we look at it today, but they needed it for so many different things. And it's interesting how much came about as man-mastered time, and over eons. That's another discussion in and of itself. But overall, we get closer to, but not quite the entire picture that we would like, that we talk about God. God is all time. Man only can exist a fraction of that. Other animals can only last a fraction of that. Plants, geologic formations, whatever, they do not last. You can count sunrises, sunsets, whatever you want, but everything else is finite to some extent. So anyway, that is their concept. Anyway, any further discussion on that? David, you may be able to be the sundial. Grace asked about the sundial. When was it created? Well, the sundial, I know the sundial is one way, but the analemma is what it's based on, and that's the movement of the sun back and forth across the horizon, if you will. And you can plot the seasons based on that, the equinox, the solstice. You can do all of that, and that had been around for a long time, even before the sundial. Okay, and then you have variations on the theme. David, did you want to add anything to that? You're muted. You're still muted, David.
Am I demuted now?
Yep, now you're okay.
No, this is the demuted version. It's not especially. I think the sundial is a very ancient concept, and as you know, we have one out of the observatory. But it just kind of tells us to mark the passage of time. It was one of the earliest ways that people used to measure the passage of time. And but I really don't have anything specific to say about it, and certainly not to connect it to the commandment that we just read, except to know what you said about what it says in Deuteronomy. Just a little sidebar about that. Here it says, remember the Sabbath day. In Deuteronomy, it says, observe the Sabbath day. And by grabbing that word observe, it allows me to use the Sabbath also to observe the sun, to observe the night sky, and to observe God's works, which I think is so important. That's all I wanted to add in that regard.
That's good. Okay, but that's a good
And
point.
now I
too.
will go back to muting.
Okay. Yes, Grace, you had your hand up.
Yeah, the reason I ask about the sundial is there's a very interesting and beautiful, it's along the river, and the sundial is across the river. So the sundial that they put into Casper, Wyoming, it's I've never seen one like it. It's just remarkable how it was put together and in the earth, and how, the horizons will hit it and change it. But they had some type of a numerical, I don't know what to call it. It's just amazing. And across the river, on the other side of the river, it would be I don't know north, south, east, or west from the river where I'm speaking of. There's a park there. They put in a labyrinth like the one we have it, and it's all done in wood, carved wood, and it's just beautiful. And you're right, along the river, where the river is sometimes flows very heavily and other times it does not. But I've never seen one by a body of water like this. So it's very creative. It's amazing how they did it. And you can, from where the sundial is and the labyrinth of the, on the opposite sides, there's like this line of distance. It goes straight across at an angle. You can't see where the sundial is in the city of Casper from the labyrinth, or vice versa. But it's interesting how the engineering of it played out. There's a big article in the newspaper about it when they put it together. It took them a couple of years to put the labyrinth in and get all the wooden pieces, and because they're hand carved and there's seating areas around it. It's really quite elaborate. If you're ever in Casper, Wyoming, make it a point to go up there and check it out. It's worth it. It's worth it. That's all.
Thank you.
That's where I thought about the sundial, because it's, one that they've been around for thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years. And so have the labyrinth.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. Very good. The next question I wanted to pose was, why is it important to list all people and animals, your son, your daughter, male or female slaves, your cattle, and even the stranger? Okay. Why is it important to list all of this? Yes, Ruth Ann.
I think it's because God wanted everybody to know that there were no exceptions to the rule. And but I guess because Shabbos Goy is not listed there, that's okay. But but that's what I would see, because especially a slave, who would have thought, that the slave could get a day off as well.
Yes. And it's an interesting thing. And every 7 years, what happens?
But they get freed.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's only part of it every
Yeah.
seventh year. But it is a very interesting concept. So even they have to cease. And strangers have to cease what they're doing. These are strangers living in your land, okay? Specifically within your settlement. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. And yes, Don.
You're muted, Don.
Doesn't that elaboration on the commandment run counter to our discussion about that some things are permissible, some exclusions are permissible on the Sabbath? Because now God is saying, there are no exceptions here.
But
this is what Ruth Ann was talking about before.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. But I think it's that there are no exceptions to normal everyday work, but there's always exceptions, like human health and well-being always comes first. I mean,
that's human common sense, but God doesn't say that. God says there won't be any exceptions. He doesn't say in the event of life or death situations, I'll give you a pass. He says there are no exceptions. So,
Okay. Now, the English translation, and here's an interesting commentary. The English translation says settlement. but the word in Hebrew says gates. Okay. Does this remind you of anything? What is the Ten Commandments? What's the earlier series of things that you have to do? It comes before the Sabbath, even though the Sabbath is considered to be the most important concept. Where does all the ritual that has to be done by the Jewish people, that takes place before? And part of that ritual was something about the gates. We say that all the time, okay? In the Via Hafta prayer, what are we supposed to do with the doors and gates?
The mezuzah, that we mark them so as we remember this. As we leave, we remember, and then we come back. We're thankful that we're coming back to our doors and gates. But and today you do that. That's marked with a mezuzah, with a prayer in that little item that gets on the doors and gates and your forehead, and that's with the tefillin.
Okay. Is there a deeper meaning for this? Instead of, if we talk about gates to the settlement, if ever you've been to walled cities, there's a gate, usually has a guard. But in Judaism, what would have been on that gate? On the doorposts of that gate, the entry to the Jewish settlement. Mezuzah.
That's what I said.
Not just the house.
The mezuzah, I said.
Yeah, that's right. The mezuzah. But on the gates to the settlement. Interesting. So in response to Don's question, we had a practical answer, but maybe if you are truly observing the Sabbath and thinking about what it represents and all its implications, not just about God, but and the world and yourself, how you do this, how you do that. The ritual part is okay, but relatively unimportant when it comes down to observance and remembering all these things, why it's important. That's more important. That's it. That's why it starts with the word remember. Passover is remember also. And God, yeah, go ahead.
Are we?
Go ahead, Michael.
Are we? How do I say this? Are we observing the Shabbat right now by doing
Yes,
this?
we are.
By opening up a computer and doing this on the internet. I don't know. I don't know.
Times have changed, Michael.
I know.
That's
what I'm getting at.
Maybe I should have a mezuzah on the computer.
Why not?
But do you have one on your door?
Yes, I do.
How many of your doors?
Right.
I have it on 7 doors inside the house. In addition to the entries.
Right.
I mean, I remember
and the gate.
Before we moved out here, asking my rabbi, what do you do with open concept kitchen? You know?
Good point.
You know, is that a doorway or is that not a doorway? And yeah.
What was his answer?
He didn't really understand the concept. I don't think. I mean,
Okay.
Coming from Pittsburgh with, you know,
Maybe it's do what you think is best.
Yeah, well, that's basically what we did.
Yes, Don.
Yeah, I know it's easy to get all tangled up in legalism once you start heading down that road. I mean, there's all kinds of twists and turns and legalities and
Sure.
but I mean, I get the main thrust is on the Sabbath day, you turn your attention to God. You put your mind on God and you keep it there until sunset. That part I get. But,
Yeah.
but the fact that there are gates mentioned kind of to me emphasizes that there is a threat to the community. And that,
Yes.
if you don't have a threat, you don't need gates. So somebody's got to be, even then, posted to guard those gates. And that,
More than likely.
and so I have to believe that the sentries and guards at that time did their best to keep their mind on prayer, but they were still doing their jobs. I mean, they were engaged in their jobs, and that's the way it was. I mean,
well, there's certain things that are necessary to preserve safety and like that, and health, and as we've discussed. So we're making an assumption. We need somebody who is a scholar that can, give us a better answer on that. Unfortunately, none of the rabbis are here, so I can't answer that. It's beyond what way beyond what I know. But it's a great question.
Plus, Marty, things have changed so much. I mean, one thing you talk about with gates, I was just wondering, okay, if you have a cow or a goat or something that you're getting milk from that you have to milk, if they're not in the barn, if they're just tied up outside, and not in a gated area, is it then permissible to milk that animal?
It's necessary for the health.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so maybe that would be the excuse, that would say it's okay.
I mean, I'm sure even back then they had to have a workaround.
Yeah. I wanted to mention something about an experience I had. I usually let everyone else have their experiences, but I wanted to I was up in Yellowstone, and it was the Sabbath. And I was looking at the details in the leaves and how different the juxtapositions of colors and shapes and everything. I was looking at the insects. I was looking at the animals, the bison and everything. And I had a close encounter with the bison, where it looked at me and I looked at it, and it just went walking on its way. But at the time, I was so moved by what I was seeing and doing. I actually conducted a Sabbath service in my head. And I said, and I asked a rabbi about this, but the buffalo, it was as if the buffalo didn't see me as a threat. We just passed by within a few feet of each other. And he's coming by and I'm standing and I'm thinking, and the buffalo just comes by, the bison. And that day, a coyote was sitting there and watching me take photographs, just sitting there, looking at me. Okay, another one walked right past me. Okay, I was doing a lot of photography, but I was deeply immersed in nature. And maybe some of the other philosophers that I mentioned, like Spinoza and oh God, I almost blanked on his name again, Rosenzweig, talking about these things come to mind to me today. because maybe this is what God wants us to do, is to contemplate his creation as part of this, not just what is going on in our lives and the world, but maybe focusing on what God has done for us. And when you change that perspective, it does deserve to be singled out as a very holy day. Not just because I was moved to do the Sabbath service, but because it is a holy day. And maybe that's what God wants us to do, is to study nature in detail, to see it, to smell it, to taste it, to touch it, and learn from that and see how it all works together. Everything has its own eye for being. What it does. Every animal has its own structured behavior. But somehow all of this comes together to make a one world. Maybe this is something God wants us to think about. Yes, David.
Unmuting. I really do appreciate and enjoyed your personal encounter. And it reminds me of Farley Mullet's famous book, Never Cry Wolf. And at the very end of the book, he decides to go seeking shelter inside a cave, a very small cave. And he goes inside the cave and he turns around, and with him in the cave are 6 wild wolves. And like you, he looked at them and they looked at him. They did not see him as a threat. He did not see them as a threat. And a similar story happened to me while walking in our yard one summer night, and I encountered a rattlesnake. And he was just sitting there, and we looked at each other, and he obviously wasn't threatened by me, and I didn't feel threatened by him. And these are beautiful, beautiful experiences.
Yeah. And so you start wondering. Yes, Don.
Yeah, just to add to that, I go out on the nature path here a lot, and there's a pack of five coyotes that I encounter regularly, and I get within 50 feet of 5 coyotes, and they don't perceive me as a threat, and I don't feel threatened. There's another bobcat who comes just as close and kind of gives me a nonchalant look. So, it's what, as soon as you show fear, then there's a problem. But it's possible to engage with almost all parts of nature without getting in trouble.
But we can learn from a lot of this, to adjust our behavior, to appreciate the other, not just the animals and plants. Think about the weeds. Okay, those are basically plants that we don't like. That's what we call a weed, but the weed has a purpose for being there. And the bugs, well, the same thing holds true. The bugs are very important. And other critters that we encounter from day to day and in different environments. Maybe we are to respect them, to remember to respect them, just like we're to remember to respect each other. And that comes up here in the word stranger. The other, to make them feel welcome. There are a lot of different stories about the other in our religion. Okay. And if we think about it, maybe this is part of the contemplation we're supposed at least think about from time to time, not just in the first person. Because we often say, well, this is the way I interpret it, or it was done this way, and that this is what I was told, or things like. But maybe it goes way beyond that, and it goes as far as saying that the Lord blessed this day and hallowed it, and we are told to recite prayers of blessing on the Sabbath. It is, I think there's a lot more to this than just being kind to the stranger on the Sabbath and welcoming the stranger and all that. It goes a lot further. In this discussion, we have covered a tremendous number of subjects. So any other ideas come to mind? I mean, we've spent an hour and a half just going over
One commandment.
this one commandment.
Yeah.
So we're still not finished with the Sabbath. If you call the Sabbath delight, the Lord's holy day honored, I will set you astride the heights of the earth and let you enjoy the heritage of your father Jacob. Okay, that is in Nehemiah 13, and Isaiah 58, 13 to 14. We haven't said anything different. So maybe, I hate to turn this into a sermon, but I think it's very important, especially in light of today's world with everything in such turmoil, that maybe sometimes taking a break from all of that and thinking about what we have discussed today, and it may help us get through what we have to do in the coming week. Okay, enough said by me. Any other comments before we move on? We could go on and on and on, but I'm not. If you want, there's more written about the Sabbath. If you want, I can do that. Or do you want me to move on? I'll go by popular demand, whatever.
I say we only have a half hour. Why move on?
Okay.
We're not
How does everyone feel?
Justice to the next.
Okay. Because, yeah, go ahead, Grace. You were going to say something. You were looking something up, I have a hunch. Something to do with seashell.
Yeah. The commentaries are very helpful. To refrain from your common, let's see where, I can't remember what I read. That's not unusual. Yeah, withdraw from common use. So what you would commonly do, throughout the rest of the week, whether it's work or crafts or all of that, it's time to withdraw from it, perhaps. I like the idea of unity in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love what that rabbi said. It's in order to keep the Sabbath holy, be at one with the universe. I mean, that just struck me as so very clear. And so today I've been enjoying life. The dog has been to the park. We had to go I'm traveling. I leave Tuesday, so I had to get a few things. He needed food, so that's a necessity, right? So I kind of felt a little bit guilty about that. He has food enough to get him through till tomorrow, but what the heck? I was out in town, and I'm looking for a container to put his kibble in that goes in his gear bag, because that's the only bag I check, is the dog's gear bag on the airplane. And to me, it wasn't work. It's not something I do commonly. It's something.
But it's an interesting, there are lots of different comments to this. And there's a whole bunch of listings of do's and don'ts that come up periodically of what you can and kind of do. But yes, what you said is very good. Yes, David.
It's windy.
This time it's
Oh, it's
me.
windy.
I just have a quick thought, because we keep talking about the Sabbath, and our Sabbath is Saturday. But the Christians, whose religion started with a Jewish rabbi, their Sabbath is Sunday. It's sort of like a conflict of interest. The Jews rest on Saturday, and the other half of the world on Sunday. I mean, it's just a weird thing to be talking both directions, and we celebrate differently because they can still work. Anyway, that was my thought. I don't know why.
The ritual part may vary, but the basic concept is the same.
Why aren't we the same day though?
Well, they're the
That's
seventh.
the ritual part. Doesn't have to.
On Saturday.
Yeah.
So they're not all on a Sunday.
Okay.
Please,
Susan,
Suzanne. Okay, I'll let you finish, Wendy, and then I'll call on Suzanne.
Wendy's done.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Suzanne.
I think the reason that the Christians have Sunday are, well, twofold. One, they believe Christ resurrected on a Sunday, so they follow that. And then the other thing is, I think it's just anti-Semitism that not the very early Christian fathers, but maybe a little bit later during the Roman times. I forget which Roman empire authorized Christianity to be legitimate, but from then I think the idea was to separate Christianity from Judaism, and they picked Sunday for anti-Semitic reasons.
Very interesting. Don, I will call on you in a second. I just wanted to comment on what was said. I have a resource. I'm going to read it to you. Sunday was made the official day of Christian worship in 321 of the Common Era, and did not at first carry the demand for rest attached to the biblical and post-biblical Shabbat. Only much later in medieval Catholicism and British American Puritanism did Sabbath rest become a major part of Sunday observance. But with the difference, especially among the Puritans, that the restrictive aspects of observance were not balanced by the innate joy of the Jewish Shabbat, and instead tended more toward the creation of a pleasureless day, buttressed by blue laws. Okay. Some Christian groups, notably the Seventh-day Adventists and various Baptist sects, continue to observe the seventh day as their Sabbath. Outside the Jewish Christian realm, the world of Greek and Roman antiquity generally viewed Shabbat with suspicion. And just a second, and even antipathy. The historian Tacitus, born around 55 CE, found most Jewish customs sinister and shameful. And that thought that Shabbat was dedicated to the adoration of Saturn. Okay, it justified the attack on the Jews as superstitious. Okay, Seneca agreed with this and stated to spend every seventh day without doing anything means to lose a seventh part of life, besides suffering loss in pressing matters from such idleness. Plutarch reported that the conquest of Jerusalem took place on the Sabbath, and that the Jews mired in their sordid habits and did not defend themselves, but remained caught in their superstitions as in a net. However, Josephus reported, there is not one city, Greek or barbarian, nor a single nation to which our custom of abstaining from work on the seventh day has not spread. So the influence of that seventh day of rest was taken up in various other cultures. So that's sort of that's also what I read here. That is from Plout. Okay, Rabbi Plout. Yes, Don.
Yeah, I was going to point out that you can't paint Christianity with one brush because there's so many different variations. And I was going to mention the Seventh-day Adventists who celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday. So
Right.
You can't say, oh, Christians. In fact,
Exactly.
The Bibles differ. You know, the Catholic Bible's different than the other standard Bibles, different than the Torah. There's variations. But my original point was coming back to the text, to Exodus, that to me, there's a real continuity between the first commandment and the commandment about the Sabbath, because the first one, God is saying, you got to worship me. It's me. You know, have I got your attention yet? And then we get on to the Sabbath, and this is what you will do while you're worshiping me on the Sabbath day. So that they're not independent commandments. There's a flow from one to the other. To me, really strengthens the Sabbath day.
Very good. Very good. Yes, Suzanne.
I'm trying to remember the story of Jericho. Didn't Joshua have his troops march around Jericho for 7
Yes.
days?
I don't remember exactly that part. I know he had to circle several times. I don't know the time.
Yeah,
I
have
don't
to
know
look that up.
during what time.
Yeah, because I can't remember if it was like once each day for 7 days, and then on the last day 7 times in that one day. Anyways, it just struck me as that could be a conflict if it was 7 days.
Can you imagine if you were contained within the walls of that, and for 7 days you heard the constant blaring of the horns?
Oh, that would be hard.
That would have been a very difficult time. Think of other means of modern day torture. I mean, wasn't it Slim Williams? It even blew the Martian invaders' heads. They exploded when they were listening to Slim Williams and his music. So go figure. But it's an interesting thing. The number 7 comes up repeatedly, the number 3 repeatedly. So take away from that what you will. But any other comments about? I think that we covered an awful lot of material. There are other commentaries that are out there. By the way, there is some midrashes that have entered into the liturgy, we broke it down into two separate passages, but in some cases we say, remember and observe the Sabbath. We use both. We don't separate it out. We use both terms. By the way, if anyone is interested, Heschel wrote an entire book about the Sabbath, and we're sort of summarizing at least half of what he comments on. There are different comments about about Shabbat. And Philo, this is Philo. After the world had been completed according to the perfect nature of the number 6, God hallowed the day following, the 7th, praising it and calling it holy. For that day is the festival, not of one city or country, but of all the earth. A day which alone it is right to call the day a festival for all people and the birthday of the world. A midrash, Jewish midrash. Shabbat complained at creation that everyone had been created with a mate, except Shabbat. God said, I will give you Israel as your mate. And another midrash with as a testimony. 3 testify for each other, Israel, Shabbat, and the Holy One, blessed be he. They testify to each other's uniqueness. God's in the world, Israel's among the nation, Shabbat in time. Another midrash, one Shabbat. God said to Israel, if you observe one Shabbat, I will account it to you as if you had observed all the mitzvot in Torah. And if you desecrate one Shabbat, I will reckon it to you as if you had desecrated all the mitzvot. If Israel would keep but one Shabbat properly, the Messiah would come. Let me just get to another. Now, this is from Heschel, Holiness in Time. The meaning of the Sabbath is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week, we live under the tyranny of things in space. On the Sabbath, we try to become attuned to holiness in time. It is a day on which we are called upon to share in what is eternal in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation, from the world of creation to the creation of the world. Leo Beck, you've probably heard his name mentioned several times in the past. The Sabbath does not mean a mere not working, nor an empty idleness. It connotes something positive. It has guided the soul unto its mystery, so that it is not a day that just interrupts, but a day that renews, speaks through it of something eternal. It is the expression of a direction for life and not just an instituted day of rest. If it were only that, or if it only became that, its essence would be taken from it. It would then be only a hollow shell. Well, we have covered the waterfront on this. What are the deeper meanings for the Shabbat, including the rituals and everything, and what other people have said about it, what we have said about it. But it is probably one of the cornerstones of our religion. Okay, if not the cornerstone that unites all Jews. Yes, Ruth Ann.
Okay, I just wanted to go back to something that Michael G. said earlier about the shofar blowing and the guitar playing. Okay, Rabbi Roman would be very, very happy to blow shofar on Shabbat. Okay, he has been told no.
Who told him no?
Me.
Yeah.
Okay. As head of the ritual committee, and yeah, basically.
Why did you tell him no?
Why?
Yeah.
Because you don't. Because I'm from a more Orthodox persuasion, and I don't believe you do not blow the shofar on Shabbat. And he's very willing to compromise. And Marty, I mean, all due respect for what you did as head of ritual committee, but I see me moving the pendulum a little bit more towards center. But
that's right.
You know, and also I can tell you, Mike Finkelstein will not blow shofar on Shabbat.
Right, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that, and we've honored that. We've honored that.
And like I said, and basically between the two, basically with the ritual committee telling Norm no, and Mike Finkelstein and trying to respect Mike Finkelstein, it's no. So that's why we do not. But you know, I do a bunch of compromises. I mean, we've got to compromise because we are such a different flavor of Judaism. I mean, I know the term we use, but I really think you have Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, and then one more you have is Green Valley. Because I think we are
everything.
we are totally everything, and we are our own. We march to the beat of our own drummer. Really,
So,
we really do.
How do you differentiate, Ruth Ann, the playing of the guitar and sounding the shofar? What is your criteria?
A compromise. It's just a compromise. It's a compromise between those people who are more Reform, okay, and those people who are more traditional, I'll say. I mean, that's one of the things when we picked the new Maxarim, okay, it was a horrible time, but because we tried to find something, and we did. I think we found something pretty well. But I know our first year here in Green Valley, when we attended our first high holiday service, Sid was, I mean, he couldn't believe the prayers that we were saying on Shabbat that weren't supposed to be said on Shabbat. And the following year, I mean, I was already head of the ritual committee, and I had to tell the Mustmans that I couldn't stand their service. We went back to Pittsburgh for the high holidays. I couldn't stand their service. So as soon as we had the option to change something, we changed it. And I think what we found is it's a nice middle of the ground, because it comes from an organization that had to be middle of the ground. But when we looked at even at the new Reform High Holiday Prayer Book, I think everybody, I mean, our congregation, they would have been aghast with it. You know,
at one time, Ruth Ann is very correct. I was told that it had to be done a certain way, because that's the way it had always been, the way it was done there. And there was certain, but over time, and I emphasize time, things change. When you are now able to institute a new way of approach, and that's fine.
Because I think a lot of it is because we are now having people move into the area
yes.
that are looking to see, is there a synagogue in the area? And they're interested in the synagogue now, not just a social club that's using the
Right.
synagogue for tax purposes.
Perfect. Great way of putting it.
And like I said, and that's the thing. I mean, as more people move in and we get more new members, we need to serve their needs. And that's what we're looking to do. And,
Well,
and by all means, anybody who doesn't like it is welcome to join the ritual committee.
You know, that's why you have different, for example, let's take a look at Tucson, Arizona. In Tucson, you have a number of synagogues. You have Reform, you have Orthodox, you have Conservative. So these people, that the Jews that are spread out there in Tucson, they have these different areas they can go to. Here in Green Valley, we only have, what, 4 or 5 synagogues? And they're all Reformed. Naming the 4 or 5 is this one, the BSTC. This is this temple or temple is Reformed. It's Orthodox. It's Conservative, and be it as it may, that's what you got. So all these people who are coming, these Jews here, have better fasten their seatbelt, you know. Because for what it is, it's
well,
just,
I still say
it's one size fits all, so to speak.
To a certain extent, I still say if you are truly an Orthodox Jew, you cannot live in Green Valley. It's impossible. Yeah. It's absolutely impossible. And those who say that they are Orthodox, they can't be.
They have to make compromise with too many
things.
Too many of the mitzvot. Yes.
Yeah. Don, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm sure you've all heard the joke about the guy marooned on the desert island.
Oh yeah.
Gods, that's mine, and that's the one I wouldn't set foot in.
Right.
That's right. But it's it's all we have. But it's one of the things, and one of the things that I like about the way our temple is structured is that over time we are making an allowance that as the community changes, we change our ritual practice.
Yes.
To suit the present community, not the temple dictating to the community it's how it's going to be conducted. So it works out for everybody who's a member. That's right.
Well,
yes, Suzanne.
Yeah.
Wait, let Suzanne have a say here.
Okay, I did find the reference. And
good.
It's in Joshua chapter 6, verses 3 and 4. And it says, and you shall encompass the city, all you men of war, and go around the city once. Thus shalt you do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horn. And the 7th day you shall compass the city 7 times, and the priest shall blow with the trumpets. So here, one of those 7 days has to be Shabbat. And I don't know, I mean, it would seem that this is work, it would seem. I mean, they were in a battle of sorts with Jericho. So I guess it's just one of those trees that we have to figure out.
One of the
it's an interesting comment, Suzanne. I do not understand it as much as I would like to, so I can't say very much on that.
Yeah, I can't either. But
Michael, let's let Ruth Ann go first because she hasn't said very much.
Based on what you just said, Susan, I wonder if this was, or God looked at this more as in line of was circumcision in the covenant, because circumcision comes above everything. I mean, if a boy is born, a week before Yom Kippur, okay, and even though everybody is fasting and you can't celebrate, the circumcision occurs on Yom Kippur. I mean, that is number one. That takes precedence over Shabbat. It takes precedence over everything. And I'm wondering if in this, that God was looking at it more in line with that, and the covenant, and something that was being done for God. And so that's why it was allowed to be done on Shabbat.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, that's a good point, I think.
Because I mean, you can't say the moil's not working and the moil's not saving anybody's life, So if you look at all those different things, but that
Interesting.
the moil
interesting
has to do that job
Yeah.
no matter what.
Right,
Very interesting.
yeah.
Yes, Michael.
The one other thing that's really a kind of a big deal with the different sects of Judaism is the people coming here and retired. They're elder people, and if they practice, let's say, orthodoxy or conservatism or whatever, they've done it for most of their lives, I would think, or a good part of their lives. So they come here and they're not getting that, and they didn't really check out Green Valley very much. But
No.
and so I understand your point of view. It's well taken, Ruth Ann. But that would be a big part of it, the age.
No, Michael, I can tell you for myself and Sid, okay, we came here as vegans.
And what?
Okay, we came here, we were vegans, non-philosophical vegans, but vegans nevertheless, okay? And number one, first thing we did when we found Green Valley was we looked at BSTC's website, and I said to Sid, would this be enough for you? Wasn't enough for me as it ended up, but would it be enough for him? And he said it would. The next thing, like I said, because we were vegans, and I didn't realize that I was going to be as much of a part of the temple as I am, because I'd never been like this before. We would have never come to Green Valley, and we would not have come to Tucson, definitely, because based on the life that I lived before we became vegans, I couldn't survive here in Tucson. Could not do it. I mean, I was accustomed to deciding in the afternoon what I was going to make for dinner, because I went up to the 2 meat markets that sold kosher meat, and based on what I found there, I know I could never live here.
Right. I understand.
Never.
How about